We want to welcome everybody to In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics. And we've taken our First Star Logistics studios on the road. We are literally less than a mile from the stadium. Bengals just losing to the Cleveland Browns to finish off the 2021-22 season. Our live stream is happening right here as we speak, reacting to the Bengals game and playoffs. Yeah, the Bengals are in the playoffs. The Cincinnati Bengals will host a playoff game next week at Paul Brown Stadium, and the opponent's still to be determined. Big game. What's a couple of games? If the Las Vegas Raiders win, it looks like the Bengals will be hosting the Raiders potentially, and that would be good because the Bengals have already played the Raiders, and they've got a little bit of game planning that's already gone on. The coaches are pretty familiar with what the Raiders have to offer. If the Bengals play the Patriots, they haven't played the Patriots for a couple of years. That one would be a tougher one, I think, to get ready for. Obviously, they've never faced the rookie quarterback, so it'd be interesting to see come up with for Mac Jones. And man, I'm telling you, Bill Belichick, even during the season, he has so much inventory of defense, and he has smart players that can do it. And he has coaches that can put it all together, and he's a defensive genius. In the regular season, he will have one defensive game plan in the first half, another totally different defensive game plan in the second half. In the playoffs, he'll have a defensive game plan each quarter. He'll change it first quarter to second quarter to third quarter, fourth quarter. Bill Belichick becomes not just an X factor, a capital X factor. Bill Belichick is a big deal in the playoffs. There's no question about it. So it'll be interesting to see. Right now, the Patriots are getting beaten and the Bills are winning. So we'll have to see how that all shakes down. But exciting. And today's football game, honestly, the Cleveland Browns, they played a lot more people than the Bengals did. The Bengals rested every starter they possibly could. They let Jamar Chase beat Chad Ochocinco's single season receiving record. He eclipsed that, but they did not keep him in the game long enough to set a new record for rookies in general in the National Football League. He came up short of that record. So, but he's had an unbelievable year. This guy is explosive. And, the thing about if we do play the Patriots, Bill Belichick's mentality is take away the primary weapon. What do you take away? Probably Jamar Chase. Well, then you have Joe Mixon. Then you have T. Higgins. Then you have Tyler Boyd sitting there in the slot. I mean, you got other weapons to worry about. That's the beauty of the Cincinnati Bengals offense. C.J. Uzomah at tight end. It's a lot of teams. It's like you take away the primary weapon, they're in trouble. Cincinnati's got a trio of the best three wide receivers, I think, as good as any in the National Football League. So take one away, somebody else is going to hurt you. It's going to be interesting to see what Bill Belichick and other defensive-minded coaches and coordinators do as they get ready to play the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs. The good news is Joe Burrow didn't even travel. Neither did Joe Mixon. Neither did all the players that were affected by COVID. And they're all going to be able to come back and participate in the playoffs next week. It looks like that's not going to be an issue. So they should be very healthy. And I still agree with what they decided to do. There's no guarantee the Bengals would have beaten the Cleveland Browns if they played everybody. I think they would have, but there's no guarantee of that. But now you've got a bunch of players that are going to play significant roles in this football game in the first round of the playoffs that are going to be mentally and physically rested and ready to go. And I agree with what Joe Burrow said last week. It all depends on how well you practice. That's going to be the key. His point was the reason we played so well down the stretch and won 3 games in a row before losing today's football game is we practiced so well every single day of the week. And they had a good week of practice last week. Joe Burrow did, as did everybody else that didn't play. Rested. Now they're going to have a good week of practice, getting ready for the opponent coming up in the playoffs. And, if it doesn't work out, they're going to get second guessed. That's just the nature of the beast. If it works out, they made a great decision. If it doesn't work out, they're going to get second guessed. That's just how it goes. You have to make the call. You're paid big bucks to make those kind of calls, coaches and management and everybody involved. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out. The Cleveland Browns offensive line is the real deal. They averaged over 5 yards a carry. They came into the game averaging 5.1 yards per carry for the season, best in the National Football League. And they did it again today. They averaged over 5 yards a carry today. They ran it 41 times, 205 yards, averaging 5 yards a pop. And remember when Bill Belichick had his rookie quarterback only throw it 3 times in a football game, and he ran it like 60? You better believe that one thing that he's going to do, if in fact it is the Patriots, he's going to try to pound the football. He's going to try to play keep away, play ball control. Anybody that has a decent running game is going to emphasize that part of it against the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals, though, they won the turnover battle. They were +2 in the turnover department. They had a stop on 4th down. So really they were +3, in my opinion, still lost the football game because, they were outgained almost by a 3-1 margin. The final stats on the day, the Browns had 376 yards to the Bengals 182. They doubled up on them, more than doubled up. The Bengals had 182 yards on 51 snaps, 3.6 yards per play. That's run and pass. The Browns averaged over 5 yards per carry in the running game. So the Browns won the battle at the line of scrimmage. There's no question about it. And they were playing their number ones, their offensive line, and they were playing Jadeveon Clowney. They were playing Myles Garrett. They were playing their ones up and down the line of scrimmage at the offensive and defensive line. This is called in the trenches. Football games are won in the trenches, won or lost in the trenches, and that's in my opinion what took place today. So we're going to start getting to some of your comments, some of your questions out there. And
Dave, my first thing, I saw a photo of you and your good friend today calling his last Cleveland Brown game. I think before we get much further, let you talk a little bit about the fact that one of the staples of the AFC North, Doug Dieken, calling it a retirement.
Yeah, Doug Dieken, it was his last football game today. Over 30 years in the broadcast booth, had a stellar 14-year career with the Cleveland Browns. Started 198 consecutive games, a record for offensive tackles in National Football League history. You talk about an Iron Man. This guy, dependability, reliability, accountability. He was a tight end initially at Illinois. They moved him to tackle, and he converted very, very well to the offensive tackle position, and a great player, and had a tremendous run as a broadcaster with the Cleveland Browns. And he's calling it a career today. 73-year-old Doug Dieken, ironically, he wore number 73 for the Cleveland Browns. Great player, great friend. Kind of a heavy heart a little bit because I lost another good friend to death, unfortunately, Dieken, who played offensive line for the Pittsburgh Steelers and have been doing their radio games as a color analyst for a bunch of years. Passed away this year, and now Doug Dieken retires, so I feel like I'm the lonesome soldier at this point in the AFC North. Lost a couple of really good friends and really talented broadcasters and great players. So it's been a crazy year that way, Dave.
Let's get into some of these questions. The first thing we want to get into is good old Jim Harden, who's with us on most of our live streams. Dave, curious your thoughts on how Chris Evans played today.
Yeah, I thought every running back showed me something today. And they rested Samaje Perine, not just Joe Mixon. Samaje Perine didn't take a snap as well. But Chris Evans, 7 carries for 35 yards, 5 yards a crack there. And he also caught the football, had 4 catches for another 24. So, and he caught a touchdown pass. I like him. I think some of his runs, one of his best runs was about for a yard gain. Penetration, he had to spin away and make some people miss and only picked up a yard. But I think the kid's got real talent. I really do. I think he ran the ball well. And I thought Williams ran the ball well also. He had 38 yards on 9 carries. And obviously Cleveland's running backs ran the ball exceptionally well. Chubb had 58 yards on only 9 carries, had a 34-yard jaunt. That was the longest run of the day. And then Johnson, 25 carries, 123 yards, averaged just under 5 yards a pop. So I thought all the running backs ran the football very darn effectively today and took some pressure off the quarterbacks. And I like Evans. I think he's a talented runner. He runs good routes. He catches the ball well out of the backfield. He's a weapon. He's definitely a weapon.
Kind of a two-parter here. Cincy fan Jungle City says Brandon Allen shouldn't even be a backup in the league, but at the same time, one nation under Flawed, guarantee you Allen is a better backup than most.
Yeah, I mean, I think Allen is. And one thing that they did today, knowing that Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett were playing, they got the ball out of his hand quickly. I mean, the ball was out. It wasn't just Brandon Allen that was having problems executing offensively. It starts up front. I mean, one time he got sacked 4 times. One time was a free runner basically at the linebacker position. Adeniji had some technique error inside there, and it's easy to pin it all on the quarterback. But I do think that the Bengals feel fortunate to have Brandon Allen as a backup quarterback. And I thought it was interesting that Joe Burrow didn't even travel, because I mentioned to Joe in the presser that we had on Wednesday. I said, now you get an opportunity to do what Brandon Allen has done for you so well, as another set of eyes coming off the football field. And he said he was looking forward to doing that, but they decided just to leave him home and not even make him travel up to Cleveland. So that aspect of it was kind of interesting, I thought. But I think Brandon Allen is a capable backup quarterback in the National Football League. I really do. Although, 16 points, the Bengals played the Cleveland Browns twice and got swept. And it's the 3rd year in a row the Bengals have been swept by the Cleveland Browns. Bengals sweep Pittsburgh, they sweep Baltimore, and get swept by Cleveland. And they only score 16 points in both football games. And in today's football game, the offense only scored 9, obviously, because the defense had the fumble recovery for a touchdown. That was a big time play. Felt they were down 14 points. That play gave them some energy and got them back in the football game. But I think Brandon Allen is in a good spot with the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't think he's in any danger of losing his job.
Knock one time says, wow, what a contrast in the level in the play. But at the same time, Dave, I look at it, and you look at a Trayvon Henderson, you look at Marcus Bailey had a big game. Some guys kind of put a notch in their belt today as far as what they mean to this team, not just for the rest of the season, but going forward. How
about Daniels in the defensive line? I mean, Mike Daniels was like, reborn today. Mike Daniels is a double-digit experienced player in the National Football League that's played multiple Pro Bowls. And now, in the twilight of his career, he's on the practice squad of the Cincinnati Bengals. They bring him off the practice squad and put him out there, and man, he was balling now. He played his tail off. If everybody played with the motor and the level of enthusiasm that he played with, they would have been in much better shape, I think. But I agree with you. Bailey, I think he had 10 or 11 tackles, like 7 of them were unassisted. He deflected the interception that was picked off in the end zone by Mike Hilton. That was a big play. And this football game was important to a lot of those guys because, not just putting good plays on tape for the Cincinnati Bengals to look at, but 31 other teams are looking at it as well. So what you want to do is when you get your opportunity to expand your role, you want to go out there and put as many good snaps on tape as you possibly can. And some guys did. Some guys didn't. Some guys did. And the real interesting thing was Darren Simmons, the way he cobbled together his special teams, because now with a lot of the players expanding their role and becoming starters offensively and defensively, they played a big role in Darren Simmons' special teams. Well, now you have to find other guys. And they brought a bunch of guys off the practice squad and brought guys back off the COVID list. And Darren Simmons made it work like he's made it work for over 2 decades here, or 2 decades in the National Football League with the Cincinnati Bengals. But that trickle-down effect is big from a roster standpoint when you're talking special teams.
I've seen Mike Daniels on Twitter post little video clips of him working. I don't know if he's staying in a hotel, if he has an apartment, or where he's staying at here in Cincinnati, but he was doing drills. He was waiting for this moment to have the opportunity to get back on the field and show what he can do.
Well, it was good to see a guy that's played as much football as he's played have an unbridled joy still for the game of football. I mean, let's face it, we're fortunate. Anybody that's played in the National Football League, playing a kid's game and living your dream as a kid and playing at the highest level you can play at and getting paid handsomely to do it, man, there's nothing better than that. Mike Daniels appreciates it, and his unbridled joy for the game was evident today. He was all over it.
Dave, there was some sad news. Comment, knock one time, rip Ross Browner. Maybe comment on the loss of Ross Browner.
Yeah, rest in peace, big boy. And, you know, Ross Browner had the most infectious laugh I've ever heard in my life. And just a big, deep belly laugh. And he would get everybody in a good mood. Ross Browner was the eternal optimist. He never lived his life in a pessimistic way. And I think that's a good way to live your life. Unfortunately, it was taken too soon at the age of 67. But Ross Browner, man, he lifted everybody. I very rarely saw that guy down. I never saw him in a bad mood. I mean, Ross Browner was just one of those guys that would bring the energy, you know. And it was sad to hear of his passing. It was COVID related, and understand he was like in a hospital for a month or so, and then finally succumbed. But it's that's a tough thing to hear. And he was just here. We just had our 40th anniversary of the Super Bowl 16 team. He was a big part of that, and he looked great and sounded great. So you just never know in this world, that's for sure. All I can tell you is, from a player standpoint, very long, really long arms, very strong. Played up in Warren, Ohio guy, and man, he could move. He could move laterally. He was fluid like a linebacker, but built, you know, where he could butt heads with the big boys in the offensive line. And man, he had a 10-sack season, Super Bowl year. He had like 10 tackles in Super Bowl 16. Had a quarterback sack of his former teammate Joe Montana. Played a really good Super Bowl, but unfortunately, we didn't win that football game. But he played at a very, very high level. He played as well as he could have, and just a consensus All-American more than once in college. Defensive Player of the Year at the college level. Very high draft pick, very high first-round draft pick by Paul Brown, the Cincinnati Bengals. And Paul Brown knew talent, knew what he was looking at. Ross Browner was part of the web. Wilson Whitley, Eddie Edwards, Ross Browner, and Gary Burley, the web. And Ross Browner was a big, big part of that. And God rest your soul, my man.
Dave, we talked about this last Sunday after the Bengals beat the Chiefs and made the playoffs. But talk about how you felt the team handled this week, knowing that they were in and prep work for the Browns game. Yes, it's a 21-16 loss, but I you know, as you said, a lot of the starters not even on the trip. This team, I really felt, fought to try to get this win when it was all said and done, because even on that onside kick, they were fighting until the refs made them stop.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, the guys that played, this football game is important to them. I mean, vitally important to them. And, you know, it's interesting because there was not a lot of scheming, not a lot of game planning that went on in this football game. You know, the Bengals coaching staff feels like they know the Cleveland Browns. They feel like even the players that played today had a pretty good handle on what the Cleveland Browns were about. And they were very vanilla. It did not, the game plan was not, you know, a big chess match kind of thing. It was just defensively. They played base defense most of the time. And they wanted to see if Bailey could take on a guard, separate from the block, and get a guy on the ground. You know, it was an evaluation time. Honestly, it was like the fourth preseason game that they didn't have this year. They only had 3 preseason games and 17 regular season games instead of 4 and 16. So now they basically got their 4th preseason game at the end of the regular season instead of the 17th regular season game, and getting ready for the playoffs. I mean, it was the same type of thing. Rest your starters, get ready to open the season. Rest your starters at the end of this season because they had already clinched, get ready to play in the playoffs. So it was that type of thing. Now, they put enough in where they felt like they could attack the Cleveland Browns on both sides of the football, but they didn't want to overload these players that didn't have that many snaps. They didn't want to have so much out there that the players were hesitant, you know, thinking too much. is it this gap that I hit? Oh no, on this call, it's this gap. They wanted guys with clear heads, just go make plays, play fast, play confidently. So it was not a big game plan type week. And as a result of that, they were able to spend time on opponents they thought they might be facing, like the Raiders, like the Indianapolis Colts, and it didn't work out that way, like the New England Patriots, who they haven't played in 2 years. Now, they've already played the Raiders. They've already played the Chargers this year. So if it works out to be one of those two teams, I think that's that's a little bit of an advantage. But teams that they did not play this year, like the Colts, like the Patriots, they used a good part of the week last week that would have been used for game planning for that last game if you had to play it and win it to get in the playoffs. They used quite a bit of that time to get an early jump on preparing for the playoffs. So they should be further along in terms of breaking opponents down, potential opponents down at this stage for that first round of the playoffs than they would have been otherwise.
A couple posts here from Dan the Man. He says if the Bills win, it's 75% percentage. We face the Patriots, 25% face the Raiders. Who's a better matchup? He kind of talked about that. Then he added to that as well. He said Steelers at KC, and if Pittsburgh would win, they would go to Tennessee, and he'd be happy to play the Steelers again in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Bengals would be extremely fearful of playing the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs. Although, as the old saying goes, it is hard to beat a good team 3 times in a season. And let's face it, Ben Roethlisberger is playing with a purpose. I mean, he knows it's winding down, and he finds a way to get it. I have nothing but respect for that guy. That guy has competed at an extremely high level for a long, long time in the highest level of football in the National Football League. And he and Mike Tomlin never had a losing season together. Mike Tomlin has been there longer than Ben Roethlisberger. Mike Tomlin has still never had a losing season. That's impressive. That really is. Pittsburgh Steelers have a rich tradition, a rich history, and you gotta give them kudos for that. No question.
Just posted the as of right now an update 10-0 Buffalo over the Jets. Yep. Let's see here. One of the questions I saw was from Cincy fan Jungle City, who's worried about COVID. Are they being extra cautious with the starters going into the playoffs? And basically followed that up with, did you think that the vaccinated, you have to be tested unless you show symptoms?
If you were vaccinated, you don't have to be tested at all unless you complain about symptoms. The league's not testing the players anymore. So the players that did test positive, they had some symptoms they were concerned about. And let's face it, some of these players are married with kids. So, you want to find out what the heck the situation is. You don't want to be selfish and infect your whole family. And the Bengals really this week was a good week. If guys felt like they had an issue, get tested, because a lot of the guys that tested positive, well, they weren't going to play anyway. There were starters like a la Joe Mixon and others that did test positive. Quentin Spain, but he was already going to be out with the ankle injury. I'm kind of doubtful in my mind that he's going to be able to play in that playoff game. He's got a pretty significant ankle sprain. I'm not sure he's going to be able to make the dance. If anybody can, he will, though. So it could be young Jackson Carman out there in that left guard position for the playoff game next week. Good chance of it.
Latest update I have here on my screen to my left is Miami 17, New England 7.
How about that?
And then we got Randy Byers comments. Any significant injuries today? We saw Ren taken off on the cart. Any other things you heard about, Dave?
Yeah, just right now, it's way too early to tell. They need, some of them are obviously getting MRIs. Some of them, it's like tonight, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, see what kind of swelling there is. Sometimes you find out how bad the injury might be overnight, and how much swelling do you have to get out of there. What does the picture look like, the MRI, after the swelling is out of there? So there's information that still needs to be gathered. Hargraves was on and off the football field multiple times with an ankle problem. And that was confirmation to me when I saw both Cleveland Brown players and Cincinnati Bengal players going down to injury at various stages of the football game. It's like, Well, there's nothing wrong with resting guys that you want to be able to be 100% against the first playoff opponent, whoever that may be. And, you know, a cautionary tale took place with the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, at the end of the football game, their all-world tight end, Kelsey, is limping off the football field. And during the course of the game, Tyreek Hill is limping and gimping around. He's got a bruised heel. A heel bruise can be something that lingers for a long time. I mean, that's just not an overnight injury. So both of those things occur in that last game. And, you know, they still playing for the number one seed and all that, so they played the players. But all I'm saying is if you don't have to play them, if they didn't have to play them, they wouldn't have played them because they don't like the fact that they're going to have to go through treatment and might not be able to practice. If they don't have the number one seed, they're going to be playing. I mean, they're playing next Sunday. And how effective will those guys be? How limited will those injuries make them as weapons in the football game? Those are the kind of things you want to avoid, and that's why, you know, Zach and the organization made the decision they made on a lot of players.
All right, Dave, we're not going to keep a lot of your time because you still got to make it the trip back from Cleveland back home to Cincinnati tonight. So
journey, yeah.
we want to thank everybody who's being with us tonight for this live stream and on In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, presented by First Star Logistics. Let's talk about Adeniji a little bit. Randy followed up with wanting to know a little bit more about what was going on maybe there with Adeniji.
Yeah, Adeniji has a little bit of an ankle issue. That's why I was wondering how much he was going to play today. They decided to play him. They thought physically, obviously, that he was okay to do it. He tweaked it, though. He tweaked it toward the end of the football game, and he was limping around. So hopefully it's nothing severe. And what they decided to do was let Adeniji play that right guard position, and then they went in a rotation with Fred Johnson and Deontay Smith at the left tackle position, and they both played in that spot. And then Fred came in as the sixth offensive lineman, short yardage and goal line snaps as well. So Frank had 8 players available to him. The thing that was concerning, though, was, you know, when Hargraves went down, you know, they had a couple of injuries in the secondary. And, I mean, you have Mike Hilton having to play slot corner. Well, they were hoping they could get through the football game without having to play Mike Hilton as the slot corner. And Ricardo Allen went down as well with a concussion. So they lost the corner. They lost the safety. And they were down to brass tacks. I mean, they were down just paper thin in the secondary, and they had to play guys that they were hoping that they would not have to play during the course of that football game. So, I mean, there's only so many guys you can carry on your roster. But, man, it was getting a little dicey at a couple of positions out there for sure.
Okay, Dave, back in August when they were in camp, we sit there and we'd have discussions about this team, and we didn't know if this was going to be the year that they've done what they've done, winning the AFC North, making the playoffs. One of the things here, Dan the Man is and another one, Cincy fan from Jungle City, he feels that this team has a good chance to go to the Super Bowl. Are they just young enough not to know any better and can pull off a run and make it to the Super Bowl?
Well, I think this football team has shown they can beat anybody and they can lose to anybody, just like every team in the National Football League. Who would have thought the Green Bay Packers would lose to the Detroit Lions today? What? I mean, it does, in my mind, as you prepare for the playoffs, it matters a hell of a lot more how you play as opposed to who you're playing. So if the Bengals bring their A game, they can beat anybody. If they bring their B- game, they can get beaten by anybody, particularly a playoff team, which is theoretically, you know, amongst the better teams in the National Football League. We saw over and over and over again on a weekly basis major upsets this year. It was an incredible year in that regard. And I think, honestly, that this all happened a year sooner than I thought. I mean, they had gone 6-26 under Zach Taylor in the first 2 years. To think that they were going to go 10-6 and turn it around like this, 10-7, now that they lost today, 10-7, and turn it around like they did and win the AFC North, it's really pretty incredible. But I agree with you. Sometimes it's not that bad to have a young team, a young coaching staff that don't know what they don't know. You know, it's like just go out there and compete. Go out there and let it go. put all the chips in the middle of the table and let it fly, And the one thing that you have to do when the playoffs start is don't change your approach. Don't all of a sudden try to do something more than you've done or less or whatever. What you've done has worked. Stay with the same protocol. Stay with the same preparation. Stay with the same everything. Don't try to be somebody you're not. Don't try to be hero ball. Don't play hero ball. Don't try to do all those things. Know your role and execute your role, and that's what'll take you a good way, in the playoffs. There's no two ways about it, and I think, their attitude should be, why not us? That's been their attitude all year. People aren't thinking that we have a shot at this. Why not us? And they thought about it all year, prepared that way. Other teams in the division had their issues physically. Other teams had issues with COVID. The Bengals had a very fortunate year in terms of staying healthy, particularly key players staying healthy and handling COVID. As an organization, they did a really good job handling COVID, but you can't take your foot off the gas with that now, because it's even more important to handle COVID. You don't want to lose a playoff game because you had, half a dozen to 10 guys test positive and they couldn't play in that football game. That would be a sin. That really would.
Crypt Keeper was asking about Mike Hilton. I did see on Twitter where he posted just shortly ago that he's good. He's ready to go.
Yeah, he's more than ready to go. I mean, he's he's one of these guys they brought in from another organization, the Pittsburgh organization, which we just talked about, that has all that rich tradition and history, and he knows what it takes. And he knows how to win playoff games, not just get in the playoffs, but win playoff games. So he's one of those veteran leaders that has made a very, very big difference for this young football team.
Dave, I mean, give me your thoughts, because Jim Harden here basically said it was hard to believe that the egg that the Colts laid today in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen so many football games over the year. I mean, anything's possible, but I mean, is that a hard one to believe, knowing what's gone on at Jacksonville all year?
That's a huge win for the Jaguars, huge win for the Detroit Lions. I mean, I've been on football teams that it didn't go well all season long, and then all of a sudden you win a big game at the end of the year, or win two big games, the final two games of the year, and it carries over to the following season. The year before we went to the Super Bowl in 1981, we were 6-10, but we were playing everybody close and won some football games that people thought, we had no business competing in, and it carried over. And getting off to a good start is going to be a big factor. Getting off to a good start, a fast start against any opponent in the playoffs is going to be a big deal. The Bengals fell behind by 14 points 3 different times to the Kansas City Chiefs. They fell behind by 14 points today. You can't dig those holes and think you're going to come back every single week. You need to get off to faster starts, better starts for sure.
All right, Dave, final thoughts about today and this coming week. How excited everybody in the city of Cincinnati is. All Bengal Nation is super excited. I know you have to be getting ready to call a playoff game for the first time in a long time. Let's get your final thoughts, and let's get you on the road headed back to Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, the Bengals went to the playoffs 5 straight years under Marvin Lewis. I mean, that's a franchise record. It was a good run. I mean, but the last time they won the division was in 2015, and Marvin didn't win a playoff game, unfortunately. Went 0-7 in the playoffs, which is amazing. And then 5 years in a row, lost in the first round of the playoffs. In a couple of cases, couldn't believe that lost to the opponent they lost to. And it became a big issue. I mean, that was the conversation. This football team, this group, doesn't even know about that. They're so young. And honestly, what they have to do is put blinders on. Don't listen to the outside noise. They had nothing to do with that 0-7 playoff record with Marvin Lewis. Nothing. Those guys that played in that era created their own history. These guys are trying to create their history. I think if they don't win this first round playoff game this year, it's going to be very, very shortly, like maybe the following year, that they do. I think that they have a quarterback that's playing at a ridiculous level. He set multi-franchise records including quarterback rating, touchdown passes, yards. I mean, you name it, he set the record. In a 16-game performance, he set all those records. Didn't take him 17 games. The 2 years that the team did advance through the playoffs all the way to the Super Bowl, they had quarterbacks that were MVP during the regular season, playing at a very high level. The team jumped on the shoulders of the quarterback. That's what this team's going to do with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is going to be the guy that is going to lead this football team next week. Everybody is going to fall in line and follow Joe Burrow's lead. And I think they've got one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League that's playing at an extremely high level, and that's how you win playoff games.
He is Dave Lapham. He is in the trenches always, all week long. You can find him on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. Dave, let's make this a date next Sunday back in the First Star Logistics Studios after well, I say Sunday, but it could be Saturday,
right,
Monday, whatever day it's going to be. But let's make a date to get back in the studio for a live stream after a Bengals playoff win.
That's right, Dave. I mean, that's the key, is a playoff win. I don't care who the opponent is. I don't care what day it is. We do know one thing. It's in Cincinnati at Paul Brown Stadium. That's the variable we know. So the Bengals have to come out and play at a high level. And the fans come out and support the team in full throat. It is massive. Home field advantage becomes even a bigger deal in the playoffs than it does in the regular season. You know, talk about the tempo of the game, how fast the players play and all that. One of the reasons, the crowd goes crazy. Players feed off the crowd, come out in full throat and cheer the Bengals on to a big victory in the first round of the playoffs.
All righty, Dave, get back home to Cincinnati safely, and we'll talk to you later this week.
Sounds good, Dave. Have a good one, sir.
Thank you, and thank you to everybody who took part in today's live stream. We'll look forward to make sure you'll be visiting In the Trenches with Dave Lapham on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast from. We want to thank First Star Logistics, as always, for the great sponsorship they give us on In the Trenches, and make sure you can check them out. If you're looking for a great opportunity, First Star Logistics has a lot of career-changing possibilities for you. Thanks, Dave.
Appreciate you, Dave. Have a good one, sir.
Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realize self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
Opportunity knocking.